It's not just to get your attention. It's to shape your attention. It's not just about selling the product. It's about buying the consumer. Think about it. Why would they spend so much money on this stuff if it didn't matter? It's very clear that a lot of folks still don't quite understand the impact that culture has on them. Do you know that picture of Garfield that says you're not immune to propaganda? People pass it around the internet all over the place now, right? That times 3 when it comes to how media systems and culture affects you. And I'm going to tell you something that's going to be a little controversial, but I want you to follow me and give it your best shot to hear me out. I'm getting a little bit tired of the way that people keep looking at culture stuff as a distraction. I'm getting a little bit tired of the rhetoric that folks like me or other culture critics or whatever are purely focused on superfluous ideas and aesthetics and stuff that doesn't matter. Well, what we should really be focused on is the bread and butter issues. Folks that are like, well, why do you care at all what celebrities do when politicians are doing XYZ? Well, I talk about politicians, and every time I talk about celebrities, I talk about why it relates and why it connects with what politicians are doing, and why what politicians are doing are actually reflections of what larger systems are doing. And I'm going to be honest here, it's always people who look a certain way who make these points. I'm going to be honest with you. It is very hard for especially white guys to understand that people who are not white and people who are not guys have to focus on culture and have to focus on media because they are reflections of and weapons of where a system is taking its oppression and how it will affect specific groups and who's on the chopping block and who's not. And I know it sounds wild, right? To be talking about Sydney Sweeney, as I was the other day, when every single day you get 5 new bills that are basically like, no one's allowed to breathe. And I also understand that a lot of people are not very good at breaking down why the politics of media and art matters. I think there is some degree of a failing there, right? I understand why it can be really frustrating as a person who was in the culture writing industry for a while to see people increasingly focusing on whether or not XYZ artist has good politics or whether or not this media, this movie, this TV show is woke or not. I can understand why that appears extremely frustrating from the outside. But you can't say that and also say art and the arts are important. Like, you can't be like, well, it's so important that people are literate and it's so important that people read. And art is beautiful because it connects people across different cultures and it has such power and it builds up these different cultural movements, and these cultural movements are reflections of the times. You can't say any of that if every time a new cultural discourse comes up, you go, this is unimportant. But what I really want to hammer on is a certain response that I got when I was talking about Sydney Sweeney. Because my videos about Sydney Sweeney and white ambiguity, part of a series in which previously I talked about Benson Boone and Sabrina Carpenter and white ambiguity, were attempts to break down how media systems dominated by capital intend to massage their way through allowing the normalization of right-wing, far right-wing, fascist politics, and that these things have an impact on us, and that we should be critical of them. We should be asking questions when a celebrity, especially a white celebrity, frankly, because who else is the GOP targeting? Who else is MAGA targeting? Is ambivalent, is neutral, or is not saying much about politics, and instead just wants you to focus on their brand deal. And at the same time is not outright like anti-gay, maybe a little woke-ish. I'm trying to tell you guys that this stuff matters and that it's a reflection of and a perpetuation of values that are part and parcel of fascism, okay? But And I'm not trying to dunk on this content creator. I've liked a lot of his stuff. I know a lot of you have liked a lot of his stuff. But when I see videos like this from a content creator like Man Carrying Thing, it just makes me a little bit sad. Because I don't feel an antagonism or a hate toward him. And I can actually see some of the ways that I can agree with him, or that I'm seeing where he's going with something. But I feel like there's a point being missed. So I'm just gonna play. It's a short skit. If you know his videos, they're short skits, right?
Hey, did you see that Sydney Sweeney ad? The Good Genes American Eagle one? Yeah, people are saying it's a dog whistle to racists. Personally, I didn't see that. I thought it was just a play on the word genes. Yeah, I didn't notice any racist dog whistles at first, but then I guess I can sort of see it. So, as an experiment, I bought the jeans. Dude, you bought the racist jeans? I'm wearing them right now. How do you feel? A little hungry. Do you feel more racist? More. Do you feel racist? What are you thinking about? I'm picturing things. Maybe you should stop. Nope, I'm not feeling racist. Okay, so maybe the ad was just... Hold on. False alarm. Great, so was the ad a racist dog whistle? Yeah, I'm still not sure, but it certainly encouraged me to buy these jeans. You're saying that stirring up a culture war controversy was great advertising? I think I'm going to go buy some more jeans.
Do you see exactly what I'm kind of hesitant about? There's a lot of times when I think Man Carrying Thing is pretty good at satirizing political events, and I agree with him on a lot of stuff. But I think he misses the mark here because he comes away with this takeaway essentially, right? Which is that, first of all, there's a vapidness to this controversy. There's a vapidness to a conversation about Sydney Sweeney and American Eagle. And also that, plain and simple, it's working because it's ultimately just an advertising campaign. It's just rage bait, and it's just stirring up controversy to get people to buy their jeans. And if that's not the message that he's trying to communicate, I understand. Maybe he's just trying to be funny. Maybe he's sorting out his own thoughts. Maybe he has thoughts that completely align with mine on this. So I'm not saying I'm fucking hating on this take, but if you see the response, you can just kind of see exactly what I'm talking about. Because there's a certain type of guy, there's a certain type of commenter on the internet that says things like, don't let the Sydney Sweeney's genes distract from the Epps gene files. Words can describe how much I don't care about this subject, right? I'm not chronically online enough to get this one. The strategy did work because now I'm going to go and watch this ad now for basically no reason. I legitimately feel like this topic is being pushed into my YouTube feed no matter how much I avoid it. I don't even know what Sydney Sweeney is famous for. And I just have to say, you're not above this shit. If you don't want to tune in because you have other priorities, then just do that. If you think this Sydney Sweeney controversy, doesn't make much sense or perhaps is not as important as another subject, then highlight that subject. But this consistent thing that people do on the internet where they're like, can't believe people are talking about this. Oh my God, I'm regretting even learning about this information because now I know what it is and I feel like my life is worse for it. It's just low effort, it offers nothing, and it makes a mockery out of these ideas that the arts and media analysis and cultural analysis should be funded. It makes a mockery out of this idea that it's important what we do with our art. It's important what we push forward in our media. It makes it just like, what's the point of watching TV at all? What's the point of watching movies at all? If it's just about how much I enjoy it and not about, hey, what's the politics that go into this? How can I analyze the politics of the people involved to see where they might have been coming from or where they might not have been coming from? So having a conversation about, whether or not one of the biggest actresses in the world, because the US media system is, oh, what a coincidence, the biggest media system in the world. Hollywood is the biggest film production industry in the world. Oh, what a coincidence that happens to align with US hegemony being dominant across the globe. One of the biggest actresses in that is now confirmed to be apparently a registered Republican in Florida who is dog whistling at eugenics in an American Eagle ad. How am I somehow stuck on frivolous things by focusing on that? And then when white women are on Twitter doing this, sitting with their dogs, then all of a sudden it's like, what the hell's going on? And when people are buying stuff or when people are sliding to the right, within Gen Z, and particularly Gen Z white men, like, let's just be real about what that demographic is, okay? I'm so tired of hearing about this being like this big Gen Z problem. Is Gen Z white guys, right, are sliding to the right. I don't think it's unrelated to the fact that they think they're above culture. They might think that they're above media, that they're too smart to get bogged down into a conversation about a commercial. But for someone like Man Carrying Thing, who talks about movies and talks about books and then makes skits on his main channel, satirizing all types of different cultural events, to be like, man, I just don't really see what the big deal is with this Sydney Sweeney ad. I just don't get it. I don't get how he doesn't connect that. And if I'm wrong, then maybe I'm misinterpreting his sketch. But it just seems like this was a specific sketch, especially with the little message he has at the end of it, supporting the idea that ultimately it's some type of big distraction. It's just some type of successful marketing campaign. Well, it's not just some successful marketing campaign. Okay? It is not sophisticated analysis to say, well, they got attention, and that's what matters, is that they got attention. So they won at the end, right? That's not sophisticated. You're not a genius for pointing this out to me. You're not a genius for telling people, hey, did you know that marketing campaigns sometimes make you mad because it still gives them attention and that supports their brand? You're not the first person to come up with this analysis. The reason people are talking about it is because, for one, it's already out there. It's already being talked about. There is merit to talking about it with some level of sophistication and analyzing just how dangerous it is. And for two, because it's dangerous. It's not something you can just hand wave away. And maybe if you're a white guy, it would seem that way. Do you understand how I'm trying not to be mean? And I'm not like, this is not like the big rift, the big beef of 2025. But I'm just trying to articulate that, like, as a guy, sometimes there's certain shit I miss because I'm a cis man. So everything from like stuff about misogyny, microaggressions, understanding how like cis women struggle at work because of their periods, but are forced culturally to not talk about it. And so it's completely invisibilized to men. Stuff like that misses me. And that's why when there's a conversation happening about it in social media and on social media and in the culture, I have to be like, oh, that's interesting. I can't just be like, well, this isn't about literally seizing the means of production, so I just have no interest in it. There's no point in me doing that. I don't get to do that, frankly. I don't get to do that. Do you know what happens when you try to do left-leaning politics, but your left-leaning politics don't pay attention to culture, don't pay attention to race and gender and sexuality, and are purely focused on bread and butter issues? Do you know what happens? You get beat bad because the other side that you're facing is using it. And you're purely not engaging on that field. You're purely just conceding that, well, it doesn't matter. Do you think somebody who has to go to school, a 15-year-old girl, has to go to school, and she's black, she's brown, and her friends are mostly white, and they love Sydney Sweeney, even though she's this registered Republican who is clearly cool with doing eugenics messaging, wink wink at the fascists. And by the way, have you seen how much Trump has supported this shit? Trump is literally tweeting out shit, or the White House is tweeting out shit like, oh, I'm looking for Sydney Sweeney, right? You think that black girl, that brown girl is in high school going like, well, it doesn't really matter what they think. Well, I should just focus on like economic populism. Do you think that that's resonant? Do you think that's a good way to bring her into your base, is by saying that thing that you care about because it's affecting you, because it has to do with how people are treating her at school and the norms that are being established that she has to try to fit into or else perish? That thing actually doesn't matter. Do you think that that's going to work? Do you think you're going to build a big coalition doing that? And then this is, I have so many rants about this because this has been building up in me. This is why then you have these like little Marxist reading groups, these little lefty organizations all over the US, and it's 90% white folks, often white men who, coincidentally, he's the leader of the group, this white guy. And they're all like, so how do we get these black people to come to our group? How do we get these black and brown people to understand that they need to do socialism? Yeah, labor pilled, exactly. Base and superstructure. It's so often misinterpreted because people think, oh, well, the base is the economic, and then the superstructure is what emerges out of that. So what matters is the base, not the superstructure. That's not what Marx's theory was at all. Marx's theory is that, yes, the superstructure emerges from the base, but the two interact with each other in really significant ways. Do you know that you're not the first white guy that has ever thought, and I'm speaking to just a general white guy here, okay? Maybe a certain white guy in my audience. What's up, Tom? How are you? Do you realize that, like, you are probably not the first white guy to think, man, you know, if we could just stop being divided by our identities and just like focus on who has the money and who has the power and who doesn't. Do you realize that if you're not the first guy to think about that, then there's a reason why that's not working? Do you understand? Like, do you realize that? Like, do you realize that, like, you're not the first person to be like, this is a distraction. You're gonna, this is a distraction yourself into, like, mass murder. Okay? You're not on a good path here. What's up, Jamie Gehring? I apologize for picking on you, my white guy in my audience. And thank you, Old Greece, for the donations. And it's just such an unsophisticated way. There's a reason it loses. Do you know why that reason is? Because everybody that isn't a socialist goes, well, this guy is clearly not even addressing race. So I'm just gonna use race to wedge a difference between people, because he's just refusing to actually engage with what people different, like how people differ, and how that experience is based off of racism, is based off of sexism, is based off of eugenicism. Oh my God, thank you, Old Greece. 5 gifts of memberships. That's unbelievable. Personally, I'm pretty sure I'm the only white guy. Thank you, Basil. I wanted to bring my attention to this comment before I get way off track. This, to me, and this is on the Hassan video, is evidence why the Sydney Sweeney dog whistle has a bigger impact than just playing identity politics. This is normalization. It's not just to get your attention. It's to shape your attention. It's not just about selling the product. It's about buying the consumer. If you shape what people want, they will buy your shit for a long period of time. If you shape what people want, they will align themselves with social systems that benefit your business. I wanted to just briefly bring in this example of this from history. And this is something that I'm going to quickly plug, the Witch and Monk podcast. That's me and my partner Nelly's podcast, where we talk about stuff, particularly like politics. Sometimes we talk about spirituality. And something we're going to talk about in an upcoming episode a little bit is De Beers. Do you know what De Beers is? It's like a super evil diamond mining company. And in 1948, they come up with this campaign written by copywriter Francis Garrity called A Diamond is Forever. They were looking for a campaign, according to this editorial, that would help boost the sales of diamonds that have fallen during the Great Depression. Because, by the way, diamonds, that wasn't exactly a thing in the 18th, 19th century. You didn't exactly go and find a diamond to marry somebody. You know, marriage has been a long time. I don't think people were buying diamond rings in pre-capitalist economies. But that became a thing. And then you have these companies whose whole job it is, historically, to do colonialism, to extract diamonds from Africa, and then to sell them. And so in order to sell those diamonds, right, to make those profits that we always talk about when it comes to capitalism, you have to shape your consumer. And how do you shape your consumer? And in this case, A Diamond is Forever was to hammer home the idea that buying diamonds, especially a diamond ring, is a lifelong investment. So it would really ensure that you care about the relationship you're investing into, particularly so that, you know, your partner doesn't fucking give you shit. So your wife doesn't give you shit when you do all types of nonsense. She has a diamond ring. Look, I invested this much in you. Capitalist logic. I get to do what I want with my investment. And yes, Lady Grey, diamonds are actually common. Their value is kept artificially high through the fake restriction of the supply. And there's tons of environmental damage being done by these diamond companies to this day that also involve extremely violent processes of extraction to sell diamonds, which they continue to convince us deserve this high price and can't be found around you. so that they can continue to make their business model work. And you don't think that culture matters? I understand that. The big problem is that for so long, culture discussion has been completely bereft of any discussion of political economy. They were just focused on who's a bad person, who's not a good person. Well, not really. They were focused on social systems and oftentimes centered those social systems as the whole reality of oppression. Thus, they didn't have a good theory of change, and they didn't have a good lens for analysis. Because if all you're talking about is racism in culture, but you don't have any theory of political economy, you don't know how racism, as it currently exists, because it exists because of capitalism, exists because of capitalism, you don't understand how much the slave trade was founded in capitalism, pre-capitalist formations, and you don't understand how much of contemporary racism was based off of capitalist fascist positions, then you might find yourself in a position where when you're critiquing white celebrities for being racist, you think, well, what's the alternative? What can they do about it? And you might say, well, they should vote for a black politician, or they should befriend black people, or they should support more black media. And sometimes those answers are just completely insufficient because they're not addressing the fact that racism is an economic issue. It is political economy, right? So I understand that there are some people, and there's a great book about this by Olufemi Taiwo called Elite Capture, are cynical about the ways that capitalists have taken identity politics and made it into the center of people's engagement with politics. They've separated it from the politics itself and made it into identitarianism or whatever you want to call it. And they use these different racial divides and the idea of representation and social progress as a way to avoid any engagement with progressing anything economically, which is to say, not addressing the problem at all. They don't care about black people. Maybe they care about rich black people, right? I get that. But there's a certain point when we do our anti-capitalist analysis where we easily fall into traps of completely sidelining black people's experiences and no longer regarding racism and sexism and homophobia and transphobia as the political economic issues they are, as the capitalist issues that they are. And so you don't actually do anti-racism if you don't do anti-capitalism. But you also don't do anti-capitalism without anti-racism. And that means when an ad is racist, and people are saying an ad is racist, white guy, I'm telling you, you should probably look into it. And maybe you should also say, hey, this is bad. At the very least. I mean, nobody, is asking you to hold to be the sole leader of the revolution. But to say that these things don't matter is a really bad tactic. I want to emphasize that to you because a lot of other people will make this point like it's immoral. It means you're a bad person. And that's all valid, frankly. A lot of you are bad people. But you do it under the guise of, well, it's tactically wrong. It's tactically a bad idea to talk about Sydney Sweeney in her ad because it takes the focus away from the real issues. It's tactically bad to focus on cultural issues. It's tactically a bad idea to focus on what happened in XYZ TV show, XYZ advertising campaign, because it's not the real issues. It's just a distraction. And when you fall into that, you actually do the work of the capitalists for them. Think about it. Why would they spend so much money on this stuff if it didn't matter? And it's one thing to say, this is not my area of expertise. And it's another thing to say, it doesn't matter. It's one thing to say, this matters in the context of what's happening in terms of rampant economic exploitation that is destroying the planet. It's another thing to say, it doesn't matter. It's almost as if there's a dialectical relationship. I see what you're saying, Romain. Exactly. So this stuff is not good enough anymore. When we say all these issues are connected, it's easy to pass that off as a slogan, and it's easy to be snarky about it. Oh, how on earth is the American Eagle advertising campaign connected to fascism? Or how is it connected to this bigger problem? How is it a meaningful connection at all? How is it not just a superfluous connection, if that? But it's not a good idea. It's a terrible idea to do that. Because when you seed that ground, then all the people who you could be bringing on board to say like, yo, I'm anti-capitalist and I see what's wrong with the Sydney Sweeney ad and it's helping me understand just how cynical and just how bad this capitalism shit is. You take that person, you throw them out the window. You can't build anything with them because you're telling them that they're naive. And frankly, you're the naive one if you think it doesn't matter. So to review, I don't hate man carrying thing, but I think you're dead wrong in minimizing it. I think you're dead wrong in minimizing it. Because this argument that Sydney Sweeney and American Eagle just get what they want by getting outraged and getting attention, and so we should just not give them attention and we should just not say that the thing is bad, and it's all just a marketing campaign to sell stuff, is one, a useless tactic because people are already paying attention to it, because it so happens that human beings pay attention to culture, because it so happens that they care about society, because it so happens that they live in society. And two, it's bad analysis, because we know for a fact that part of the way that these political economies gain power, maintain power, and create electorates that are hostile to socialist ideas, part of the way that they do that is by wedging cultural problems. And you have to address them, or else they're just going to stay there. You don't fix that problem by ignoring it. You don't fix that problem by demeaning it. You fix that problem by addressing it. And it fundamentally benefits these companies to have a white supremacist, fascist presidency. That's why the CEO of American Eagle is a fascist. He's a MAGA guy. That's why. It fundamentally benefits him then. Because it shapes people when you tell them that white genetics are the best. That white genetics are great. It shapes people when you outrage black people, when you make black people angry, and then point at them and say they're being outrageous. It shapes people. And when you shape people, you get to extract more profit from them. So that's my point. Say what you want.